Welcome to a dose of inspiration for the solo traveller. Today's expert interview is with Mariellen Ward, who runs the blog Breathe, Dream, Go, Tales of Travel and Transformation. Mariellen is originally from Canada, from Toronto, and has travelled extensively through India for the last 10 years. And she's going to give us an insight into visiting India as a woman travelling alone. So, hi Mariellen, thanks for joining me today.
Hello, well, thank you very much.
I know that I've already covered India on the expert interview section, but I wanted to get another perspective because, as you said, India is so large and you obviously come from a different demographic and have different different interests in India as well. So I wanted to get your take on India. But before we talk about India, can you just tell us a bit about your background?
Sure. Like you said, I'm from Toronto, and my background is in communications. I've always been a writer, and my degree is in journalism. And didn't discover I was a traveler, that I was a free spirit, until I was actually in my 40s already. And actually, it's kind of a long story. It's on my blog, but actually, I went through a series of quite traumatic losses in my life over a period of a couple of years, and I was actually in a the lowest point of my life, no question, very depression actually, and realized I needed to find a way to get out of it. And so I started. I've been doing yoga for a long time, but I started doing yoga, in a much bigger way. I threw myself into yoga kind of as a way to get out of the depression. And one thing led to another, and then I had this very strange experience. Too much to go into now, but I suddenly felt compelled to go to India, and that was in 2004. And then I spent a year, actually, 11 months from that feeling of like I have to go to India to actually getting on the plane. Was 11 months of planning and saving, and I was terrified. So for people who think, you have to be ready to go on a big trip, you have to be ready to be a solo traveler, I didn't feel ready. I felt called, and I really felt I needed to do something because, to restart my life. But did I feel ready? No, I was terrified, and I was, my ticket was dated for 6 months after arriving. So I was, I had 6 months in India ahead of me with no idea what would happen when I got on that plane in December of 2005. So I think there's a big lesson there. And again, I stayed for the entire 6 months that I planned to stay for. And that just completely changed my life. And it's been since then that I've become a travel writer and a travel blogger. I wasn't a travel writer before. I was a writer, but more of a corporate writer. Now I'm writing from my heart, things I really care about, the kind of writing I always wanted to do since childhood. So that was going to India. Just, it's the classic cliche story. It completely changed my life.
Wow. Because I know that you concentrate on meaningful adventure travel, don't you? And you say that India is your muse and your soul culture. So I was going to ask
Yeah.
you what drew you to India, but you said it was a calling. You said you just felt as if you had to go there.
Yeah, but what was interesting was, since then, I've had 10 years of traveling in India and thinking about it, obviously, writing about it, and I realized sometimes, things happen in your life and you don't really understand why, but then afterwards, when you look back, you see that the dots connect, and I realized actually I wanted to go to India probably since childhood. I was always fascinated with anything Eastern. I was drawing Maharaja palaces and on my walls when I was a child and reading the Arabian Nights. Um, I love George Harrison. I love seeing the pictures of him in Rishikesh with the marigolds around his neck. When I was 17, when everybody else was going to rock concerts, I went to see Ravi Shankar. I remember going all the way I was living in Toronto, all the way to Hamilton to see Ravi Shankar. Um, so all the signs were there. It just took me. It just took a long time to get there. I don't know why. I wish I'd gone sooner.
And you mentioned Rishikesh, which is probably the kind of spiritual home of yoga, isn't it? And I know you concentrate on spirituality a lot in your blog. So can
Mm-hmm.
you tell us a bit about that and your experiences?
Um, yeah, Rishikesh was the first. When I arrived in India in 2005, I was staying with friends in Delhi, and my first trip alone out of Delhi was actually to Rishikesh. I mean, I just made it basically a beeline right there. Um, Rishikesh has been. It's first of all, it's a very beautiful place. It reminds me a little bit of Canada because it's the place where the Ganga, the Ganges River, tumbles out of the mountains and meets the plains. So Rishikesh is a valley with mountains at one end, and the river comes out of it. It's beautiful. It's green. It's clean. I do my dip, my swim, or whatever in the river there. It's fine. It's absolutely clean, crystal clear. Well, it's green, but it's clean water and it's very fresh. And this spot has been attracting sages and yogis, seekers, since the beginning of time. They don't even know. It's so far back. I mean, people have been gathering in this beautiful valley, this peaceful valley, to chant and do yoga and meditate just forever. And so the energy there is incredible. It's a beautiful place, but it's also got this incredible spirituality and energy. And there's just like ashrams and temples, up and down each side of the river. It's pretty amazing place.
Is that your favourite place in India?
It's one of them, that's for sure. I have a lot, but it's one of them. Yeah, yeah.
And I know that India does get quite a lot of bad press. So I just wanted to touch on that and just what your experience of that was. Is it just the media blowing things out of proportion? Because so many people travel to India every year and they're absolutely fine, and it's only these really small isolated cases that kind of get reported. So what's your take on how India treats women and if it's safe?
Yeah, so obviously that's a big topic, and I have to say, when I started going to India 10 years ago, when you look at my early blog posts, when I look back, when I think about my reading, the question of women's safety it never came up. It was like a minor, like little bit. I think Lonely Planet has a little section on it. It wasn't 10 years ago. It wasn't an issue. Getting ripped off, deli belly, train delays, dealing with the crowds and the heat. Yes, these were all issues that I was concerned about. But my safety as a woman in India 10 years ago, it wasn't even, it never came up. We might find that hard to believe now, because that issue has been dominating the media for the last few years. But it's a recent issue. And so that's interesting. So, there's a couple of things about that. One is, I'm very careful to separate the treatment of women in India. That, I'm not a sociologist. I'm not an investigative reporter. I'm a travel writer. I don't cover the treatment of women in India, and I don't feel like I have any authority to make any meaningful contribution to that issue. So I always talk about, my expertise is in travel and travel writing and being a traveler in India. Even though I actually do live with an Indian family and I have a partner who's Indian for 10 years, I'm not Indian. So I like to separate these two issues. So as a travel writer and as a foreign traveler in India, I myself have not experienced very many negative incidents over 10 years. Very, very few. A lot of staring. Yes, you have to get used to the staring. But if you don't mind the staring and you're willing to be, bold and confident and sometimes a little bit impolite, I think that can definitely go a long way. And I get interviewed a lot about this issue, and people often ask me, "Is India a safe place for female travelers?" And the answer I've developed is that I don't think that's the right question. I don't think places are safe or unsafe, with a few exceptions, like maybe a war-torn country or something.
Yeah.
I think it's how you travel and your attitude. It's two things. First of all, if you feel comfortable and confident, which I do in India, I think that goes a long way to helping you be more safe. Can I say that with any scientific assurity? No, but that's what I think, and that's my experience. And then the other thing is practicing what I call safe travel strategies. I'm a huge advocate of practicing safe travel strategies. So, I have a bunch of tips on my blog, but it's, dress for the place. Like in India, dress modestly. Be aware of the culture. Be aware that you can't, flirt with the auto driver. He doesn't have the sophistication to understand. He's going to think that that's a direct, come on, right? Don't arrive, at a train station or an airport late at night if you can help it. definitely get a phone. I absolutely a huge believer in having a local phone, a local SIM, and knowing people you can phone. I have a little trick that I do quite often when I get in a taxi is I just phone my friend, and especially in Delhi, and I just say, okay, I'm in the taxi, and here's the taxi number, so the taxi driver can hear me. I probably don't even need to do it, but it's just little things. It's just little things like this, like that um, you just have to be aware and cautious. Not fearful. Doesn't help because that emits the wrong energy. But cautious, and also all the studies show that confidence goes a long way. That men who attack women look for vulnerable, fearful women. They don't look for the woman who's striding down the street with comfort and confidence. So I think that really helps. Yeah. Okay, that's a long answer. I hope.
No, absolutely great tips. Okay. Great tips. I believe that as well. I believe in just walking with an air of confidence, even if you're scared stiff or you're lost or you don't know what you're doing. Just keep that confidence up. And I've been so lucky. I've had hardly any problems traveling by myself, and I think it's because I step into that confidence even when I don't feel it. Yeah, it definitely helps.
And there's one other issue I don't really want to get into in any depth, but just if you look at statistics, and statistics, are kind of iffy, but if you look at statistics, most women who are assaulted or attacked or abused in the world, it's by their spouse or their partner. It's not by a stranger. Those are actually much rarer incidents. And again, if you look at the statistics of women who are raped or even killed, I'm sad to say, traveling, India is low on the list. Statistically, India is not high on the list. So why did it get so much media attention? I have theories about that. They're not nice. But I don't know. There was some terrible incidents that just the media. I have a degree in journalism. I know how the media works. They go on a frenzy. They go on a frenzy, and then they create what's called the one story, and that's a whole other topic for another day. But it's definitely you have to take what the media dishes out with a grain of salt, I think.
Definitely, and you need to go there for yourself and experience it for yourself as well.
Yeah, and listen to other travelers, and they'll tell you, yeah, sometimes you can be hassled. Yeah, people stare at you, and I had my breast grabbed in Old Delhi once years ago. I mean, it's not like nothing happens. I mean, there is. It's not. I'm not saying that there's no issues, that there's nothing going on. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that having a sense of perspective really helps. That's what I'm saying.
Definitely. So I know that you've been travelling there for 10 years. Have you seen any changes or noticed anything within that decade?
India is the most changing country on earth. That's my feeling. And it's one of the reasons it's so fascinating. Wow. 10 years ago, India was still at the tail end of being a very, very traditional society. And it still is in many ways, especially when you get out of the metros. And I remember, the airport in Delhi I always call it the old shed. It's just like this big shed. Now they've got this super fancy high-tech airport that looks like you could be in, Los Angeles or something. And they have a metro station that's just gorgeous, a metro system that's just amazing. I mean, yeah, it's changed completely. It's opening up to the world. And there's a youth quake going on. India is the youngest country on earth. It has the most people under 25 in the world. So there's an incredible youth quake going on, and I now assert that there's a couple of really hip areas in Mumbai and Delhi and Bangalore. I think they're the hippest places on earth right now, like Bandra and Hoskas in Delhi. These places are just way more hip than anything we got happening.
Well, that's interesting. That's good to know.
Yeah. People aren't aware of it, but
no. Because I went to Mumbai and I was actually quite surprised by how westernised it was and how
Mumbai especially is westernised.
It seemed. It didn't feel like I was in India, apart from just the smells and the senses. But to look at it, you could kind of be in England or something. So have you met many women travelling alone during your time in India?
Yeah, it's very common there. Again, the media is a whole different world unto itself, but down on the ground, quite often the media doesn't get it right. Women see women traveling all over India alone, often in two pairs actually, or couples. But yeah, I've met lots of women traveling alone. Lots.
And you said that you feel really comfortable in India.
Yeah, and I'm a kind of an odd case, though, I think, because I'm one of the few people who felt an affinity with India, maybe right from the get-go. Or I'm sure some people feel an affinity, but I was just really lucky, I think, that I landed. I had a really gentle landing, which apparently is fairly uncommon. But because of a friend of mine who picked me up at the airport, and he drove me to his family home, a three-generation Punjabi family in South Delhi. And they basically just adopted me immediately. And I live there with them when I'm in Delhi to this day, most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time. And they're my Indian family, and they just adopted me and took care of me. And so I got this really amazing soft landing, and that combined with feeling an uncanny affinity with India right from the beginning, which I've never felt for any other country. Um, yeah. So I think I got off to a really good start. Now, mind you, that first 6 months of travel, yeah, did I have bumps? I sure did, like everybody else. But overall, I think it was amazing. It was. I always think of it now as kind of a magic carpet ride. That first trip.
That's a good way of putting it. It's a good
Yeah,
analogy.
it just was amazing. I had so many amazing, wonderful things happen one after another, and it wasn't, to be honest, what I expected. I expected it to be a lot tougher, but it was just, I never felt so alive in my life.
Wow. It's just such a vibrant, colourful place that just ignites all of your senses, isn't it? And I think if you're open to it, it's an amazing experience. But if you're a bit scared, it can be a bit of a culture shock, I think.
Attitude is everything in India, and it just mirrors back to you what, like you said, if you're open to it. And I don't know why India is like this, but it's a very kind of I'm not sure what the right word is, but it's very reactive. Like if you put out some sort of fearful or negative energy, man, it'll just hit you right back right away. It's just incredible. I've had that experience lots of times. But also on the flip side, if you're open and trusting and loving and caught and kind of yeah, you're just open and non-judgmental towards the experience. It's just, there's nothing else like it. It's amazing.
So, what do you think is India's attraction? I know it's so big and it's so diverse and there's so many different aspects of it. But what do you think is its main attraction for women visiting?
I think there's yeah, the two things that come to my mind are spirituality. Certainly, there's a lot of people who go to India because of spiritual reasons, because either they're doing yoga or that's pretty big nowadays. But India's always been the destination for spiritual seekers since, again, there's even, a theory that Jesus, during the lost years in Jesus' life, that he went to yoga, that he went to India and became a yogi, and that he went back, and a lot of the powers that he had, like to bring people back from the dead and turn water into wine and things, was yogic things that he learned, in India. So, I mean, Mark Twain, who else? The Beatles, of course, famously went to Rishikesh. Steve Jobs.
Steve
Uh,
Jobs. Okay.
oh yeah, Steve Jobs famously went to India. He said it changed his life, and many people. Elizabeth Gilbert, Eat, Pray, Love. I mean, it goes on and on and on, going back as far as you want. So it's always been a destination for seekers and people who just want to know more and experience more about the more meaningful, like I say, more meaningful aspect of life, the deeper, why am I here? Who am I? Questions. And then I think the other one is the sense of adventure. I mean, in this day and age, it's pretty hard to have a sense of adventure. Most places are pretty similar and pretty safe, which is good. I mean, Canada is a very safe, wonderful place to live, but that can be kind of boring. So what Canadians do is we go camping, we go out in the wilderness, and we have these huge parks where you can see moose and bears and things, and you get a bit of a sense of excitement and adventure that way. Of course, you're out in the wilderness; it's pretty exciting. So that's what we do here in Canada. But I think India offers cultural adventure. just the culture shock of being there, and everything. So, as you say, so it's Technicolor, it's intense,
Yeah.
I've spent a lot of time there, but it doesn't matter. Every day is still an adventure. I walk out the door and I'm like, Alice in Wonderland, basically.
That just makes you feel alive every day.
Absolutely. Asia, I love Asia. Asia's my favorite continent. In Asia, everybody, they live life out in the open, whereas we live it all sort of inside our houses and in our backyards. But in Asia, everything's out in the open, and maybe this is probably especially true for India. And yeah, you just feel part of the flow of life.
Yeah. Wow. If you only had 1 month to travel in India, which is not a long time at all, then
No.
what would your dream itinerary be? I guess it depends on what you want to go there for.
Yeah, it depends on what you want to go there for. But my big advice to people is always to pick a region. It's not that hard to travel in India, but it's tiring. It's tiring, and people maybe forget how big the country is. I think it's the seventh largest country on earth. It's got the second highest population at 1.2 billion. It's very hot a lot of the time. Things don't always run on time. They're crowded. There's a lack of what we consider efficiency. So it's tiring to travel there. So my advice is always to pick a region. Like pick, the standard Golden Triangle, Delhi, Agra for the Taj Mahal, and Jaipur could be the basis for a northern kind of itinerary where you could also include just spending a lot more time in Rajasthan, which is an amazing state, one of my favorites. And then also you could even go up to Rishikesh, and which isn't that far from Delhi. It's a 4-hour train ride. And then you're in the foothills, and you could maybe venture a little bit into the Himalayas and see some of the. I love going up into the mountains. Or you could pick a completely different itinerary. It would be a southern itinerary where you go to. My other favorite state is Kerala. I love Kerala. I personally, I much prefer it to Goa. I find Goa very touristy, but I love Kerala. And then nearby Kerala is Karnataka and Tamil Nadu, and these are 3 states very close to each other in the south. They make up the bottom. India is shaped like a. It's got a kind of a V bottom to it, and these make up the 3 states in the south. And there's a lot of amazing, interesting things to do in those 3 states, but probably especially Kerala, which I always call it the soft landing. If you're a little bit nervous about going to India, people say the north is tougher. Start in Kerala, beautiful tropical beaches, and there's an old historic port town called Cochin, and you can go up into they've got a different set of hills. They're not like the Himalayas, they're much lower, and you can go up to the tea region, and it's a beautiful, beautiful area.
Would you say there are any hidden gems there? If you stay away from the main touristy areas, I guess what you just described are kind of the hidden gems.
Well, India's a little bit different than other places in my view. In fact, I recommend people do stay on the touristy area until they get to know the country, because I think it's just, there's more tourism infrastructure, and for solo female travelers, I would say it would be considered safer. So I don't really think India is the right place to think about in terms of hidden gems, although on the other hand, I think that the whole country is awash in hidden gems. I mean, it's just such an ancient, culture, and unlike a place like China that had the Cultural Revolution, some countries have had these revolutions that decided that everything old was bad, and then they got rid of them. That's never happened in India. So it has 32 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, but I think if somebody got to work, they could probably have many more times that. They could have many more times that number, because there's so much in India. Like, it's just, there's hidden gems around every corner.
Okay, that's interesting. And you mentioned before about the train journeys. Would you say that that's the best way to get around? Because I know that you can pay for different classes on the trains, can't you?
Right. I love the train in India, and I like taking long train rides. And you're right. The different classes. It's a little complicated at first, but I always recommend go first or second class. Don't try to go third class. Well, they don't really have third class. They have sleeper class or general class. I wouldn't recommend that. So 2 AC or CC is chair car, or 1 AC. It takes some getting to know the classes, but taking the train in India is a great adventure. It's one of my favorite things.
And are there anything? And is there anything to do in the evening if you're by yourself as a woman?
It kind of depends on where you're staying. Like, are you in a guest house? Are you in a resort? An ashram? Are you in a big city? It kind of really depends. So I think sometimes if you're the type of person who does like to have a pretty active social life, I would definitely recommend using Lonely Planet Guide, because everybody else who's like-minded, everybody else who has that kind of mentality is going to be using it too. So you'll know where everybody's going. For my first 3 trips to India, I used Lonely Planet Guide pretty slavishly, and just used it to plot out where I was going and where I would stay, and it was a great experience. But then at a certain point, I threw it away. Nothing against Lonely Planet; it's a great book. It's the Bible. But I wanted to, I've been there enough that I wanted to go off on my own. But if you want to socialize, just go and stay where Lonely Planet tells you to stay, and then you'll be like in guest houses filled with other people who are also there because the Lonely Planet told them to go there, and then you'll meet people.
That's a good point, actually. And that you've just answered my next question, which was, is it easy to meet people?
Very. It's very. Oh my God, yeah. Because there's 1.2 billion Indians, and at any given time, there's probably 500,000 foreign travelers, or maybe 1 million in India. I don't know. A small percentage. Believe me, you stick out. I can't tell you how much time I've spent being the only foreigner in a sea of of local people. Yeah. And so if you see in fact, one of my very good friends, that's how I met her. I walked into this beauty parlor in South Delhi where the tourists don't go, and there was this blonde woman. It's like, oh my God, you're blonde. So am I. Let's talk. And we became she was about to get married to an Indian guy. She's from New Zealand. She's still my friend, and that's how we met. So, oh man, it's so easy to meet other travelers.
That's great. I find that when I'm travelling, not just specifically in India as well, but as soon as you see somebody from the same background as you, it's kind of a more intense friendship anyway, and people are really open. You're like, oh my God, I haven't seen somebody like me for days, and then
that's gone. It's true, especially in my case, because I live with an Indian family, and I don't live in a touristy area. So sometimes, a long time goes, and all my friends are Indian as well, pretty much in India. So sometimes a long time goes by before I see another foreigner. But when I'm out traveling, and I do, there's just a natural kind of friendliness, and it's just natural. It's just the way it is.
It's great, isn't it? So are there any areas that you would say you would avoid in India? It's probably a hard question to ask.
No, I think it's actually an easy answer, which is I would, if you're a solo female traveler, if you're new to India, I think just stay on the tourist routes. Don't go into the sketchy areas or the rough areas. In the last 3 years, I've heard about 3 different rapes of foreign women in India, and each one of them. In one case, a woman was hitchhiking in the mountains alone. It wasn't her fault, though. She was something happened. She was in a bad situation. Another case, a woman and her boyfriend were cycling through a very remote area in the center of the country. A woman was I don't know 100% what she was doing, but she was definitely speaking with a group of very sort of sketchy guys, rough trade type guys, in a very very, very sketchy part of Delhi, which I never recommend people stay in Paharganj. They always do. Nobody listens to me. Well, sometimes they listen to me, and then I get very nice thank you emails. But there's a kind of a backpacker ghetto in Delhi called Paharganj, and it just attracts the kind of people who are really rough trade. The people who are selling drugs and all kinds of stuff. And I don't recommend people go into those kind of very sketchy areas or off the beaten path. And I have noticed, a trend when that seems to be when these things tend to happen. I always recommend people stay in South Delhi.
In where, sorry?
There's a lot of little guest houses in South Delhi.
South Delhi.
In South Delhi, yeah, that's where I recommend people stay. It's much nicer. You're off the tourist. You're out of the highly touristy area, and it's really nice. And because of the metro, you can easily get anywhere in Delhi. The metro is fantastic. I take it every day when I'm in Delhi.
Fantastic. So I know you just answered this, but I was going to say, what would you say to somebody who's looking to go to India for the first time and is feeling a bit apprehensive about it?
Um, Generally speaking, I tell people if you don't feel called to India, maybe you shouldn't go. India's wonderful, but it's not the easiest place to travel. It's not, it's not like going to, I don't know, Paris or Belize or Caribbean or something. I mean, it's a transformative travel destination. It's not a holiday. It's not a vacation. Um, so if you're really iffy, or if you don't really want to go, you just think you should or something, I would say probably don't go. But if you, on the other hand, if you feel called to go to India, like I had a calling to go, I would just, start planning, just, try your best to get over the anxiety. Because if you feel that calling, you'll probably love it. This is what I've noticed anyway, from my experience.
So what are your plans for the future? I know you said that you live in Delhi every winter.
Yeah. So I'll probably continue to do that. I love being in India in the winter, and I hate being in Canada in the winter. God knows I love my country. I really do. I love Canada. I love being Canadian. I'm very proud of being Canadian. But I hate the cold. Like, I really hate it. It is definitely, it's not, I wouldn't say it's one of the things I don't like about Canada. It's the only thing I don't like about Canada. I really hate the cold, and I really love India. So it just makes so much sense for me to be here in Canada in the summer, and then to be in India in the winter. And that's kind of basically how I've set up my life. So, and that's what I'm planning to do going forward. I don't see that changing, because I love being here, and I'm very close to my nieces and nephews and things here. So I think I'll probably just have this split personality and this split life. I'm one person when I'm here in Canada, and I'm a little bit different when I'm in India. And I guess that's just my life.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you'd like to add about India?
I think we've covered just about everything. I mean, I think that, just to underline two important things that I tell people is, if you feel called to go to India, then I think you should. If you don't, probably you shouldn't. And for first timers, we didn't talk too much about first time visitors, but I think for first time visitors, I don't particularly feel India is an unsafe destination. We talked about that. I don't really like to talk about destinations as being safe or unsafe, but I don't feel it is. However, I do think that there's a huge learning curve to being in India, that it's very, very intense just to learn how to be there, learn how to negotiate with tuk-tuk drivers, learn how to get a train ticket. Nothing is easy in India. So I think if people, for first timers, you should either go with somebody who knows India well, or meet someone there who knows India well, or other, Indian friends or whatever, or you should maybe join a small group tour.
Yeah.
To just jump right into the deep end of this, I kind of jumped into the deep end, but I got a seriously lucky break by, being immediately adopted by a lovely family in South Delhi. So, I think first timers need to be a little bit more cautious, not because it's unsafe, but just because it's overwhelming and it hits you right between the eyes, and nothing really prepares you for it. But if you can just, try to get a few pieces in place so that you're not just there alone, at the start, I think that's really wise. And and then I guess the final thing is just, we talked about it, but just to underline how important your attitude is, and having an open, confident attitude, just, it just goes a really, really long way, especially in India. And I don't know why that's true, but I really believe that.
Thank you. So where can people go to find out more about you? Because I know that you also host the Twitter hashtag #WeGoSolo as well. Is that every Wednesday?
We're on hiatus right now. I kind of burned out doing it, because I think I did it for about 2 years. So we're on hiatus right now. WeGoSolo is still the hashtag. Yeah, you can use WeGoSolo, or you can search WeGoSolo, the hashtag for female solo travelers. It is still being used. The Twitter chat is on hiatus at the moment. I have a lot of information. I've been blogging for 6 years about India. I have a lot of information on my blog, which is breathedreamgo.com, and I have some specific articles, like my top tips for women traveling in India. I have quite a few resources on there for people, and it is a good, and especially if you're iffy, like you said, like there's a lot of inspiration. I write with, to be honest, I write with the idea of trying to inspire, others, especially women solo travelers. It's part of what I do. Breathe, dream, go. I mean, even my blog name is kind of it's a mantra or a formula, right? Breathe, dream, and go.
Yeah, fantastic. No, your blog's amazing. So for anybody who wants some more information about India, if you head to Breathe, Dream, Go, and I'll put the link underneath the interview as well. So thank you so much for joining us today, Mariellen. It's lovely to meet you and to find out a bit more about India. And I wish you every success in the future.
Thank you very much. This was a wonderful experience. And it's nice to meet you too.